Format there. Welcome everybody to our 11th webinar for Business Agility series. And we are going to be talking about the secret to unlocking discretionary energy with Sondra Norris. For those that came to one of our previous ones, that was a few months ago. Sondra shared some of her insights with the culture and the culture change from Slap Company. I'm really excited to welcome her back as well. So welcome, Sondra. Hope you're doing well. I know it's early for you in the States.
It's fine.
We're ending our day in the US, in South Africa today, so we're good over there. So just a few slides, a little bit of a introduction to the business agility and what we're doing at the moment for those that aren't familiar with that. And then I'll hand over to Sondra, who will share some of her insights specifically around the content, the topic of culture and discretionary energy. And I think that's quite an important, especially now. I can feel sometimes energy is dissipating, and how do we actually use whatever we've got left, right, for our organization. But start off, you'll start seeing it on the bottom right. We've got something called Gashido, and it says, can you Gashido? So interesting for you on the call. If you can put in the chat what you think Gashido stands for. Those that do know, don't cheat. But it's just a little bit of a thing that we're trying to play with words. But a little bit about business agility and why is this important for us as an organization. So IQ Business has been doing agile work since 2011, helping organizations, large corporates, primarily financial services and banking, in helping them with their agile ways of working. And it's really been about frameworks and methods and practices like Scrum and Kanban, and if you progress it further to Scaled Agile Framework and SAFe. And what has happened in the last couple of years, we realized that actually this is much more than just a process change. This is very much a people and a culture change. And if you think about agility and people, the goal that organizations have and the purpose that organizations have and the direction that they have around agility, we often use this quote from Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum. It says, in the new world, it's not the big fish which eats the small fish, it's the fast fish which eats the slow fish. And obviously changes are required in order to do that. And we need to think about what is that benefit for organizations. Ultimately, really, it is about the ability to adapt to change, right? We know that change is all around us. We know that we have to think about what change is and how do we respond to that to remain competitive. So for IQ Business and the agility team, we really are working with partners out there, one of them being the Slap Company, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But it really is about how do we help organizations to achieve this goal of agility and business agility, to be more responsive and adaptable to what is happening out there. And we partnered with Agility Health not so long ago, probably 2 years now, where we've been using the EBA model as our inspiration to go to market. And it covers 7 pillars, and you can read up about it on the website, but really is about how do we make sure that we are customer-centric, how do we ensure that we are strategically aligned in the execution of what we do, how do we ensure that we organize around value, so the structure and design that we look at, and not only the frameworks and mindset, which has been our bread and butter for many years, but then how does that impact leadership and culture? How do we make that stick from a change management and a people change point of view? And then how do we support that from a technology perspective? So we actually at IQ Business, I look after a team of 35 agile consultants, coaches, and trainers. And from 1 July, we've decided that we're going to integrate and kind of loosely couple with our change management team, referred to as people advisory. And together we're going to market as what we call business agility, really about how do we integrate the benefit of what we do as a collective in order to go to market and really think about how do we achieve all of these pillars. So within IQ Business, we've got experience innovation that deals with customer centricity, our team that looks after lean portfolio management, agile frameworks and mindset, org structure and design, and make it stick is where the strong OD, organizational development and design, will be focused on. And then obviously looking at the impact from a leadership point of view and how do we deal with that. Sorry, I'm going up and down. So the focus for today is really about leadership and culture and how does that work? And that's where the SLAP company and Sondra, I'm going to hand it over to you. For those that don't know Sondra, I think you are sharing at the moment, and I'm just going to spotlight you for our guests.
Oh,
so yay. You can be nice and big and everybody can see you. Yeah, Sondra, maybe just you can introduce yourself, and I know that people have some of you have already observed and been part of Sondra's talks before, but really looking forward to sharing the next 55 minutes with you.
Thanks, BS.
54 now.
54 now. Okay. Oh, I better hurry up. Well, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time of day it is for everybody. I'm happy to be here again, sharing some of the work that the SLAP company does, everybody. And we're talking about this topic of discretionary energy today, because I know I have spent 20 years inside companies where I've watched leaders say, we want more open communication and collaboration across people. Let's implement Slack, or let's implement Rike, or let's get a new whatever kind of a system it is. And then they're sort of left scratching their heads saying, we spent all this money on implementing and getting this new tool put in. Why aren't people using it? And what people on the ground are saying is, I don't want one more thing to look at. I already have email, and my complaint about having too much email doesn't mean I want something else to look at. It means I want our communication to get better. And that's fundamentally a human choice, not the solution of the tool. And the same thing happens with Agile, or any sort of thing that we try to implement within the organization, is that it comes down to every individual person in the moment of choosing to do the new thing, to say, I will volunteer this new behavior. And so what we want to talk about today is, how do we get people to choose in that moment to do the new thing instead of doing the old thing? And as humans, and BS mentioned just about change in general, as humans, there's a lot of things that need to fall into place for us in that moment, on that team, under that leadership, to decide to do the new thing. So before I launch into that topic, for those of you who are new to the SLAP company, and to me, if you're new to, if you didn't join us in February for the last webinar, I'll talk a little bit first about myself. I started my career way back in years that started with the numbers 19. And I started in learning and development as a training specialist, doing things like QW20, if you remember things like that, and ISO 9000 when it was still that low number, that kind of training, customer service, communication skills. And as time went on, this was an era of contract trainers being able to get hired to be kind of mercenary and go deliver training in all sorts of different companies. So I decided to hang out my own shingle after I learned about software at Cadence. And I was on my own for about 7 years. And one of my last clients was Electronic Arts, the video game company. And this is where I spent most of my career. I was there for 12 years as a consultant and then as a full-time person. And I started in learning and development, and I ended up being responsible for global leadership and management development. After which time I took some time to say, I'm tired of the big company. I think I want to try small companies and startups. And I was a little bit late to the startup game, but I ended up in my startup experience actually looking after HR in an executive role and capacity. And by the end of the third one, I was just extraordinarily tired. I was taking a break. And the name of our company, SLAP, is actually the founder's last name. He is Stan Slap, and many of you may have heard of him. But Stan called me. I had met him many times throughout the length of my career and seen the work that he had done. We used him as a vendor at Electronic Arts and saw tremendous results inside that company. And he called me when I was about 2 months into my sabbatical. And he said, hey, I've just gotten a deal in Africa, and I have to deliver to 1,200 managers, and I have no idea how I'm going to get it done. Do you want to help me figure it out? And I said, the work that you have done impacted my ability to build my own career, and I want to share that with other people. I want to join what SLAP does. And so We joined up, this is now in 2017, we joined up officially. And we've had the pleasure of doing lots of great work with lots of great companies. So all of that just to say, what do we do at SLAP? At SLAP, we really are building the business case for humanity. And what that means to us is that we stand fundamentally against any instance of any person causing another human to feel small. We think that is one of the worst things one person could do to another. And sometimes it happens unintentionally. But still, if a person leaves an interaction with another person feeling less than, feeling slighted, feeling judged, that's not okay. Because that person goes home as a parent, as a partner, as a child, as a sibling, as a community member, and that follows you home. So if you're in a work environment where you are made to feel small, allowed to feel small, that has tremendous ripple effects when you go back to the rest of your life. And so hand in hand with that, the diminishment or marginalization of any person or group of people, this is what we are trying to shift in the world and for the world. And we do it kind of one person at a time, one group of managers at a time. And Stan originally was doing this work and decided he was going to write a book. And then he decided he was going to write another book. So the first book is Bury My Heart at Conference Room B, which you see here. And this is really advisory for all of us to say, if we want to be able to live in an emotionally committed way, and what that would mean is if my values that have grown inside of me to become so important are, for example, freedom, compassion, peace, family, how can I be living those 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, whether I am at work, whether I'm at home, no matter where I am? How do I do that? Because that's what allows me to deal with change and to be able to ride through change in a productive way, whether that's at work or whether that's at home, wherever change might be happening. How do I maintain my perspective of who I am as a person and not allow the world to really knock me off my center? So that was the first book, and that became a New York Times bestseller. Stan's second book is called Under the Hood, and this is a much more business-oriented book, and it has a lot to do with the last webinar we did about what leaders and managers need to understand about what they're really doing with the people at work who are depending on them. What is kind of the thing that we're actually affecting when we as leaders roll out a strategy? What things do we need to be thinking about in order to get people to really commit to and act on and perform the way that we need them to perform? And both of those books are available in a billion different ways, electronically and as actual physical books. And you can drop us a line and we can manage to help you find your way to those if you're interested in reading either of those books. And over the 24 years that SLAP has been in business, we had the great fortune to work with some amazing companies. And some of these are, hugely impressive logos. We also have some smaller logos who are just as passionate about the work that they're trying to do in the world, the stamp that they're trying to make on the world, and the lives that they affect. And one of the leaders that we worked with in the last year, he said to his company one day, it's not just the 2,000 people who work here that I am responsible for. It's the 8,000 people, because there's a family for each one of you who is depending on you, not to just provide a paycheck, but to come home and be the best person that you can be. And I'm committed to making this place that we call work a place that makes you better, not a place that makes you smaller or worse or mean or sad. And it was one of the great CEOs that we got to work with because he was so dedicated to not just making a successful company, but also making successful lives for all the people that were involved, all the way out to kids, teachers of the kids, all those folks. So with that little bit of level setting, one of the statements that we love to use at SLAP is actually the motto of the London School of Economics. And it's this, you can see it along the bottom in Latin there, but it means to know the causes of things. Because if I am at work, if I am in a relationship, and I want it to be a certain way, I need to understand what is actually the cause of behavior. What is the cause of anything that's happening if I want to have an effect, if I want to change something, if I want to move something forward? I want my efforts to be pointed at the right thing. And so we're pretty obsessive about making sure that we understand the causes of things and helping our customers understand what is it that you're really impacting as a leader, as a manager, maybe as somebody in a support role, as a change consultant, as a human capital employee. What is it that you're really trying to shift when you say to your organization, our strategy is changing and we need you to act differently in order to help us be successful? What is it that we're really trying to unlock there? So as we talk through this, here's where we'll be going. We're going to talk a little bit about how do people make the decision to spend and invest their discretionary energy in any relationship, or why do they decide to withhold it in any kind of a relationship? Then we'll move to what contributes to that decision. So what are all the little elements that are happening inside of us as a human sentient being? What are the elements that contribute to that decision? And then we'll bring it to work. So within an organization, as a leader, as a manager, what does this really mean for you? How can you use this information to not only achieve your own goals as a leader and a manager, your own personal goals as a leader and a manager, but of course also to help the business be successful and to protect the success of the enterprise that you're a member of? After that, we'll look at what are some of the mistakes that people make when they are in a leadership and a management position and they're trying to affect behavioral change, and they're doing it in a way that has become accepted, and then still not seeing the behavior that they want to see. What's going on there? What is the mistaken assumption that's happening? And then we'll get to what's really going on. So we're going to be looking at really a lot of human tendencies, a lot of human ways of being, so that as leaders and managers, you can ask yourself some critical questions. How am I doing in these categories as a leader, as a manager, to best set the stage to get the behavior that I'm looking for? And then we'll wrap up with some, here's, tips, techniques, actions that you can take. So we have just about, 15 slides or something like that to go through. And as we are progressing, please feel free to drop things into the chat. We'll be able to grab those and either respond to them at the end or in the moment if that happens. Enver and BS will manage that for us as we go ahead. So let's forge ahead here and talk about how do we as human beings choose in any relationship, whether it's a friendship, it's a marriage, it's at work with people that we're working with, or it's really the relationship that we have with kind of the enterprise that we're a member of. And to do that, we're going to boil it down to really person to person. So in a two-person relationship. And if you were with us on the last webinar, you may remember this particular model that we use. So on the left-hand side of the screen, let's say you're in a relationship with another person where you have sustained and unconditional support. And you also have a sense of protection, mutual protection. So I protect the other person protects me. We also advocate for one another. We also feel fairly confident that we know the other person's intentions. We know the other person's purpose and why they do the things they do and what they believe in and what standards they hold themselves to. We feel like we're confident that we can count on those things to not change. And that helps us understand in any given situation why somebody is behaving the way they're behaving. With those things in place, we have a real sense of safety and certainty. And that person feels like home. That person, when I'm with that person, I feel like I can be whoever I am and I can be free of judgment. So I can behave in vulnerable ways. I can behave in bold ways. I can talk to that person about crazy dreams without fear of being laughed at. And when I have that, who I am is enough. I'm able, willing, happy to choose to bring all of myself. I don't feel like I have to hide any part of myself in this kind of a relationship. And we call that emotional commitment. And in that kind of relationship, I will choose to invest my discretionary energy into that relationship because I want to protect it. It feels good to be in that kind of a relationship. Now, that is, in most cases, that's aspirational. I mean, that's hard. That's hard to even have in our most important and significant relationships in our lives. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. It doesn't mean we should give up. It doesn't mean we should say, you know what, people are just terrible. And so I'm just always going to keep myself inside this shell, or I'm always going to be angry and force my way and yell and scream in order to get things done. It's still always something that we could shoot for, because this is our one and only precious life. And to squander our time is not worth it at the end of our days. And to live in relationships, like I'll talk about on the right-hand side here, it's a painful place to be. So on the right-hand side, imagine yourself in a relationship with another person or with an organization where you feel that there have been promises that have been made and broken, where there has been trust that has been broken. Even if it's just a perception, it still feels the same inside of our human bodies. If I'm in a relationship at work or outside of work where I'm not sure how somebody might react, or I want to protect them, that's an unsafe, uncertain kind of a feeling, where if I come to work on Tuesday and I talk to my coworker and I say, which boss do we have today? Do we have the happy boss or the mad boss or the angry boss or the sad boss? Which one is it? It's uncertain. It's uncomfortable. If you're going to be mean all the time. I'd rather have somebody who's a jerk all the time, and at least you're consistent and I'm sure how you're going to react so I can prepare for that. If I ever have to compromise who I am, what I believe in, if I have to filter my reactions in a relationship because I'm worried, overly worried about how somebody will react, it's not a comfortable place to be. This is an unsafe relationship. It's an uncertain relationship. And in that kind of a relationship, it hurts us. It hurts us to be in that relationship. It hurts us because somebody is in judgment of us and we may feel that's unfair. It hurts us because we are having to give up who we are or hide who we are. And when we're in that state, that emotional state, our brain is always going to rationalize it. And so if you think about this in a work example, a work context, you would say, well, you know what? All jobs are like this. You know, there is no perfect job out there. And I have to get the money to pay the mortgage and put the food on the table. And this is just what grown-ups do. We just put up with it. Well, do you really have to put up with it? Because what you're doing by making that choice is you're deciding for some portion of your life to live only as a shadow of who you really are and who you really can be. So that's a crime against yourself. And it also isn't helping the organization really to be in that state of mind, to be in that emotional state at work. You're switched off to some degree. We call that emotional detachment. And we do that to protect ourselves because nobody likes to feel hurt. Nobody likes to feel marginalized. And so our brains do their magic so that we don't feel bad. But then we're existing only as that shadow of ourselves. And in that relationship, I am 100% going to hesitate. I'm going to resist investing my discretionary energy into that. Why would I? Why would I say, yes, I'll do extra for you if I feel that I'm already in a marginalized position? So this is kind of grounding thoughts as we go forward through the rest of this, that this is what you're trying to affect. This is the cause. This is the heart of the matter. as a leader, as a manager, as a support person, thinking about how do I get people to adopt Agile? How do I get people to think about this new strategy that we have and be willing to give us new behaviors and to take chances, to be risky, to be innovative, to be creative? This is the little microcosm of things that you're actually trying to understand and impact in order to get people to choose to do things differently. And where this is all happening is inside of our brains. And our brains are complicated. There's lots more than 3 parts to it, but we're going to focus here on the limbic brain. This is not anything new. There's been a lot of, I see this posted all the time everywhere. And I'm going to talk about it too, very, very simply, to say that your limbic brain is a really old part of your brain. And it's the part of your brain that is constantly scanning the environment to determine, is the situation that I'm in right now, is it one that is going to help me, or is it one that's going to hurt me? And of course, this was a great defense mechanism and a great thing to have thousands of years ago when we were literally in physical danger all the time. But our brains haven't evolved yet. And so our brains still have this same reaction to things that happen at work inside an air-conditioned building on the 11th floor. It's no longer what it was 1,000 years ago, but our brains haven't quite figured out how to make the difference between an actual physical danger to us and a boss who says something that embarrasses us in front of all of our peers. Our brains react in the same exact way, which is to say, if our limbic brain says this is something that's going to hurt me, we are treated to a chemical cocktail immediately of adrenaline and cortisol, because our brains believe no more time to think, you must just act. Either you're going to fight or you're going to flee right now. And your brain actually becomes disabled. Your thinking brain becomes disabled. And so in that moment, maybe it is dry mouth, a flush of heat that comes over you. Maybe you freeze. Maybe you go into a combative, angry, kind of going to have an argument, but it's not appropriate to have an argument at work. And so you squash that down inside of yourself, and then you're left with these chemicals in your body. And these chemicals in your body over time, if you're living on adrenaline and cortisol, your physical health is going to deteriorate. This is the stress things that when you go to the doctor and they say you're too stressed out, it's because of these kinds of chemicals. Alternatively, if you're in that left side emotionally committed kind of a relationship and your brain perceives that experience, then you get this, the same immediacy of a chemical cocktail, but it's very different chemicals. This time you're getting dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. And these are the things that our brain uses to help us determine quickly, I want to stay here. I want to contribute to this. I want to make this better. These are the chemicals of bonding, of love, of affiliation, and they ensure, honestly, the procreation of our species on the one hand, but they also make it so that we want to protect whatever it is that has created that particular situation for us. And so when we think about this as leaders and managers, and we can't know about every human being, what their history is, and what trigger we might have tripped by accident because of some childhood experience. But we can generally know what to do to help a person be more on the help me side than on the hurt me side. So I'm not suggesting ever that we are trying to do therapy with a person, that we are trying to understand deep personal experiences. But I am suggesting generally think about sometimes, if I see bad behavior in one of my employees, what might be going on for them? Might they be stuck in some sort of literally physical state here that's disabling them from behaving in the way that I want them to behave? So just keeping this in the back of my mind as a tactic for when I am leading and managing and looking and asking, why am I not getting what I want? Give this a moment to think about. Is this something that I should consider? And when we get to the end, we'll talk about some specific ways to think about that. For our brains today to feel like we are in a safe place, we are in a healthy place, The thing that we can do for ourselves is really be able to align our lives so that we're able to feel most of the time that we're living in those values that are most important to us, that we're able to say, you know what, I was able to do this thing, to have achievement, to have recognition, to have advancement, to have peace, to have freedom. I'm able most of the time to live in that state, which means I am then feeling better inside myself. I am also more consistent as a manager, as a leader, as an employee, and all those other roles that we play outside of work in our real lives, as I like to say. So as a leader, what does this mean? Broad strokes as a leader. You're a human being who is also a leader. And what that means is that you envision for yourself the better world that, first of all, you want for yourself. You want to construct a place and an environment, the relationships where you are able to live in your values. You want to be able to say most of the time, I have constructed the relationships I want, the job I want, the team I want, and I have been able to create so that when I'm at work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, those relationships feel good. I am doing my best to help this group of people really work well together. That's my drive as a leader. Where I choose to do it is almost irrelevant. My drive personally as a leader is to create that experience for myself. And in order to have that success, I know I need the help of other people to do it. So this is a purpose. This is a deep-seated personal purpose, long before it becomes a leadership or management process applied at work. So it becomes more important than I need to implement Agile. I need to put in a new SAP system. I need to get my engineering team working better with my customer success team. Those are just mechanics. Those are just things to do. But what's most important is how I get those things done. That purpose rides much higher than the process. So wherever I'm doing it doesn't matter. However, of course, I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose a company that's going to have longevity, that a company that has a great leadership team, that doesn't seem to always make decisions based only on revenue, that manages to try to live to values that are important. And that's going to be sustainable. That's going to be there for a while. Those are the ways that as a leader, I'm going to look at the enterprise that I'm choosing to work at. Now, the company that I join has people. Maybe I have the good fortune of being able to construct my own team. And these people are here. And we don't know what their mindset is right now, but we know that as humans, we also know that they are also just as we are. They want to have a life of ease, a life of calm, a life where they can dream without fear. That's what humans would like to have. We don't want the humans under our watch feeling like they're having to compromise who they are. And so what that means is what we really want to do is have the leader attached to the people. We want to have the people attached to the leader. The work just happens to be there. And this is going to come back when we talk about some of the flawed assumptions that we use as leaders when we try to get those people to do the things that we want them to do. So as you sit here today, whether you are a human capital support person, whether you're a leader or a manager yourself, the thoughts that you might be having right now should be, how do I get those humans to really latch on to my personal vision for leadership? How do I create that environment, which will then result in the business performance that I'm looking for? Because when I'm in that kind of a relationship, I want to protect it. I want to follow that leader anywhere that leader goes, because whether we're in a good situation or a challenging situation, I want to perform for that person. I want to give my discretionary energy to that person. So let's move along to look at what this means once we get inside of an organization. Because an organization is a construct. An organization has rules. An organization has relationships where there is actual power over one another. And so there's implications, of course, for this. So as we look at an organizational chart, Yours may or may not look something like this, but may not have this many layers. It may have more layers. It may have more organizations or less, but roughly organizational chart here. So at the very top, it's their job to be looking out at the landscape of the of the world and the industry to define what their strategy is going to be. And then they are obviously going to communicate that down. And if they're hoping for success, they have to recognize that they're reliant on all the levels below to make that strategy real. They have to recognize that there are energy requirements of all the levels below in order to be successful. Because when they do go and communicate this downwards, they need those next levels below, directly below. They're responsible for figuring out, what do we actually have to do? What is it, the action that we have to take in order to allow that layer below to really do the job that they have to do? And then as we continue on, that next layer says, okay, we have translated this strategy. Now we need this next layer to figure out what are the business objectives that we're going to go do. And we're expecting and counting on you to be able to mobilize your troops and get people going. So as we are cascading objectives and performance and business goals, we also always have to have in mind, how are we keeping their mindset, the next level below us? How are we keeping their mindset in our own minds to say, is this actually going to happen? Are we recognizing just how much energy it's going to take to deliver on these expectations? And when we get to this level of directors, senior managers, the people who are really interacting with the teams, who are responsible for motivating, mobilizing, creating plans with to-do lists, those folks, those managers, they have to be able to operate as much as possible without having to subordinate or compromise their values. Meaning, most people become managers because at some level, yes, you have more ability to get more money, to have more impact and those things, yes. But also because somewhere along the line, we've had a manager and we've said, I could do that better. I'm pretty sure I could be a better manager than that person was for me. And I want to have the opportunity to make lives better for people. I want to give clear goals, be transparent, help people be successful in their careers. But if I am depleted of energy, if I am having to make really difficult choices that violate my values, for example, you can't give the raises or promotions that you want. For example, the policies that are messed up and the procedures that are broken, you never have the time or the resources or the funding to fix them. And so you have to keep looking your team in the eye and telling them, I know it's really hard, but just keep going. How many times can you say that before you really start as a manager to feel crappy about it? And that you're not being who you intended to be and who you want to be for these people. And at what point do you, there's a chat here that says it's easier to choose the path with least resistance, but often leads to unresolved issues building up. So how many times as a manager are you saying, you know what, I just give up. This system is too hard. It doesn't allow me to do this. And living that way shouldn't be okay with you. And so we'll talk about the answers to those questions in a few minutes. So I have to be able to feel the reality of my desire as a leader, to create a better world for people. And that's kind of a selfish thing, but it's necessary because otherwise we're all walking around as shells of ourselves, and that's not okay. And once it gets down to the employee level of the organization and we're saying, great, hey, everybody, you're the ones who are responsible for executing this. You're the ones who have to go do the hard work, have to create all the things that we are selling, that we are delivering, that we are producing. Our business is built on your backs. Those folks also need to be able to feel the impact of really living better at work, not just working harder for somebody else's benefit. I mean, let's be honest, when we say, let's do agile, the first question is because we need to get to revenue faster, better, more predictably, and reliably. That's the first thought of why we do anything at a company. And so it is the managers and leaders who say, how can I help my organization see that what we're trying to do is not just to the benefit of the organization, and so that the CEO can make another $20 million this year, but also so that their lives at work will be better because we are making this change. So that's the reality here, to say that every level in the organization has to be able to feel like I want to choose to invest my discretionary energy. And that's why when we say we're going to try to do some big implementation or integration of anything, it has to start at the top, because each level feeds the next level down, because we're in an organizational structure. So it is the burden of the leader. It's the burden of the manager. It's the burden of the level above to be creating the environment that we want to live in. Now, what if you are in an organization today where it's not coming down to you? The people above you are not feeding you the way you need to be fed. You can still create an amazing bubble, an amazing team environment for your team. And you will still have the job that you have to do upwards and sideways, and it's going to take a lot of energy, but you and your team can become an incredible force where you have energy, you have hope, you have renewal on your own team. And then you have maybe a longer-ish road ahead of you to say, let me prove to my organization the results I'm able to get because of the way I manage, in order to get more people managing the way you manage. So that's kind of the organizational reality. And that brings us to when we choose that path of least resistance and we say, I'm just going to communicate the way we've always communicated. I kind of give up on this thing over here because it's never going to change. That's a really tough place to be in mentally. It's a really tough place to be in emotionally. But some of the mistakes that we make are that we believe, oftentimes as leaders and managers, that our employees are here, they have a job. If they want to keep their job, please just do as you're told. Because the business strategy that we're communicating to you is going to enable you to keep your job, get paid, and not be at risk. And sometimes that's enough for people to do at least the minimum and to move the business forward. But it certainly is not enough to inspire and motivate people. It certainly is not enough to get a person on the day that they have to choose to give bad news, to choose to give the bad news. They may choose that path of least resistance and say, you know what, I don't feel like dealing with Bob and his crappy reaction today. So I'm just going to take this bad news and I'm going to put it over here under this piece of paper until later, because it just takes too much energy for me to have that conversation. And so we want to be able to say, what do we need to shift? What support does this person need to be willing to give the bad news to Bob, even though Bob is going to have the reaction that he might have? So it's never enough to just say what the intellectual case is, what the business case is. Oftentimes as leaders, after we've done our beginning of the year kickoff, we've had lots of fanfare. We've thought that people should be very excited, and then we don't see them responding. Sometimes we make the mistake of believing that the people don't understand. They don't understand the importance of the strategy. They don't understand the urgency of the strategy. Maybe they just don't understand the strategy at all. No, the people do understand the strategy. They've just seen 7 failed strategies. They've heard this promise before 20 times. And so why should I be more excited this time? Because you did more balloons, because you did more food, because you got a band, because you brought us to some special place. I'm still not going to do any more. Personally, all the money you just spent on that offsite, I'd rather have it in my paycheck. I'd rather have it reflected in a better benefits package. So there's another assumption that people make, is that leaders make, is that our employees just must not understand. And when we walk forward with these 2 assumptions, it causes us just to keep doing the same things over and over, which is the big announcements, louder, broader, more foo-for-ah, and trying to get people involved. And it doesn't work. And so we need something different to look at, because it isn't about the intellectual part of our brain. It's about the emotional part of our brain on a daily basis. And so changing our thinking as leaders and managers from, we invested all of this to get this new system in place. This is what they said they wanted, was fix this process. Why aren't they responding to us? Why aren't they stepping up? Why aren't they being accountable and urgent? That thinking, if you shift that thinking, if you shift the question that you ask yourself, that can make all the difference in the world to the actions that you take, which will actually get to what's driving the employee behavior, which is, what do our people believe about this relationship that they're in that's causing them to hesitate and withhold their discretionary energy? What's missing? And so let's take a look then at, what are these sources? What do we need? What do we have when we are in this great relationship? And so there's 5 areas that you can look at. The first thing that we've already been talking about is energy. Literally, is there any, first of all, or are people just wrung out, doing too much? They have put up with failed strategies, broken promises for so long. That's going to drain anybody's energy. So is there any energy left to give? And then, are they willing, and why are they not willing? So to answer that question, we need to look at the next 4 items. So the next category is huge. It's trust. And so, do you have a list of values at your company? Probably. How is that list of values used by the employees? Is it really the way it was intended, which is, I want to show integrity, I want to show accountability, I want to be creative and innovative? Or is it, there they go, violating our value of integrity again. I can't count on them to do what they said they were going to do. So even though that might not be your responsibility as a manager, is your team generally feeling like, I am in a relationship with a company that says one thing and does another? Not your fault, maybe, not your responsibility, maybe, but that would be a signal to, how can you build the trust even more between you and your team with your own stated values, your own standards, your own intentions, and being very clear about what those are, making promises only that you can keep, and delivering to your team so that you have that great bubble going inside that company. Third thing is, if you asked your team, do you really think it's safe or even sensible or sane to do the things that we're asking you? And if you think your team would say no, because the last time we did this, it ended up going away. We put in hours and hours and hours, and then it shifted again. So why in the world would we do it again? Why in the world would we put this effort in again? One of the jobs of the organization and of the manager is to ensure that a person feels like, if I take the risk, I'm not going to get punished. If I take the risk, it's going to have impact. If I take the risk, I'm going to get rewarded and recognized for taking that risk. That's what makes those behaviors safe or sane for me to do in that minute, in that meeting, on that day, the choice that I need to make. Do I take the path of least resistance, or do I do the thing that my manager is asking me to do, which is new, which is different, which is scary? Fourth thing is all about performance reinforcement. And performance reinforcement, as we typically think about it, has to do with compensation, has to do with benefits, has to do with a performance review. And did you accomplish the things that you were going to accomplish? Have you demonstrated the values that the company has said? And so if you shift your thinking on performance reinforcement as well, this is a great place where you as an individual manager can get a lot of leverage in the areas that are important. So as an employee, what I want to know anytime my performance gets reinforced, what I really want to know is that a reflection of our relationship and my standing in that relationship? And what that means is this: as a manager, I might say to my team, here's the 3 things that are most important to me. The 3 things that are most important to me are open communication. Give me the bad news whenever I need to hear the bad news. I am in this role. I am taking that responsibility. I am going to do my best to not be a jerk when you give me bad news. And then the 3rd thing that is most important to me on this team is that everybody has a sense of freedom to be who they are. Those are the 3 most important things to me. And I am going to look as a manager for every opportunity to keep talking about those things as much as possible. I'm not going to let quarterly analyst reports override the way I communicate with my team, so that the messages that my team hears are only and always about money and revenue and goals and objectives. I'm going to talk more about my standards and how somebody on my team did something that was in line with those standards. I noticed it. It was important to me. And now you are reinforced that you're safe in this relationship, and the way that you behave was the right way in this relationship. You are safe with me because you behaved in a certain way. So shifting that view and the way that you implement performance reinforcement. And then the 5th thing is really a little bit more of an outgrowth of having the first 4 things, but it is how somebody is willing to represent and talk about their experience at work. So we've all had the experience where we go home and somebody says, what did you do today? And you said, I don't know. I spent 8 more hours in 8 more meetings, and they were all terrible, badly run, not organized. And they're the same conversation we've been having for the last 9 months. So I have not been having an impact. I'm in a bad mood and I don't want to go tomorrow. And why am I still doing this job? Like, that is not only told and reflected when you get home, but it's also reflected when people are interacting with your customers. And so what you want to know from your employees is, do you feel like this is a place that you want to represent well, positively to people outside? Because that will come when the first 4 are met. Because when the first 4 are met, people are living better inside the job. They're getting to be who they are inside the job, and they're going to protect what's happening for the business. So what are some things that you can do? And let me take a look at the chat here before I forge ahead. Oh, yeah.
There's a few questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to address the questions, or you want to wrap up and give us, so there's 7 minutes left just to help you?
Thank you. Yes, exactly. How might we pick our battles and choose which time to raise concern? And how might we as leadership encourage people to address topics of concern up front? These are all such huge, amazing questions. So let me say one thing before we move on, which is we at SLAP are totally available to have more conversations about this at any time. And we will also write some answers to you for the questions that we don't get to. So let me talk a little bit just about the solutions here, because I think that they will address some of the questions here. And Benita, I mean, yes, and especially with the new generation entering the workforce, and mental wellness is so highlighted now. So as we've been talking about energy, obviously don't do things to the best of your ability that steal your organization's energy. And so being very mindful about giving context. So managers, leaders, CEOs, C-suites, all of that, they spend all their time thinking about things that the employees really never hear about. They don't hear the thought process. They don't hear the decision-making process. And we assume that we just put out this splashy presentation and everyone's just going to, jump onto it without any of the context of why did we choose this? How did we choose this? What else did we think about? What happened to last year's thing? So when we talk about transparency, what the culture, the employees really want in transparency is, how did we get here? Not what's our PE ratio and how much cash do we have? They really want to know, how did you come to this conclusion? That gives great context that we've never thought about. also about predictability, saying as a manager to a person, as a manager to my team. So if I'm saying we're going to implement Agile, that means you're going to have to do 3 things differently. And I know that it's going to be hard for you. I know that it can even be hard to just come up with 15 minutes for our daily scrum. I know that can be hard for you, especially when so-and-so comes and grabs you and you're going to have to tell them, no, I have to go to my scrum. And having that level of detail, that level of understanding of what you're asking your team to do is one of the ways that people start to feel like, one of the questions was, how do I get people to not just come to me with a resignation, but build this? This is one of the ways over time is that people get connected to you as a person. And so they're much less likely to just come and resign. They're much more likely to say, I want to protect this relationship. I'm feeling uncomfortable in this relationship. It is the manager's job to make it a place on your team where somebody can come and talk to you about those things that are uncomfortable. And employees are looking at you as the manager as responsible for creating that. So that means talking to people about your standards and demonstrating for people that you care about what matters to them as you talk about these things of context and predictability. And you have a thought about, are any of my people feeling like they're in that right side of that relationship? Because we ask ourselves in that right side relationship, why am I staying in a relationship where I am feeling like crap all the time? Don't I think more of myself? And that's where we don't want people. And so if people are feeling that way, having those more open conversations can help. And then let me do one more thing here, which is about trust, because it is such a big conversation. And I've already alluded to this, which is when we say, we have this list of generic values, and these show up on probably 90% of companies' values somewhere, those words are in there. And really keeping an open mind to saying things like, I know that this might feel like it's going against our value of integrity. I know that I haven't shown as much accountability. Being willing to be that vulnerable with your team allows them to start uncoupling, looking for evidence of, there we go again, releasing a product with bugs. There we go again, where he can just make excuses for his behavior, but when I do that, I get chewed out. No accountability, no respect here. So you can start to shift that if you can be very honest about saying, I struggle with the way that we're demonstrating our company values as well. And so these little things of sharing your own thoughts about it can help to build that relationship. At the end of our day, what we're talking about doing, and we'll be able to receive this deck, what we're talking about is really being human first and a manager second. And that has to be, for a lot of us, kind of a personal decision to persevere in an organization if we are ourselves as the managers kind of depleted of energy. We have to figure out, where do we get our energy first? And sometimes that can be a bit of a journey. And so as I look at these things in the chat to say, how realistic, Aura, your question, how realistic is it for managers to handle the pressures from above and below on the quest for creating a better environment? It's a very personal and individual question. And it's doing whatever you can do to feed yourself. And I know that over the course of my career, I have been in companies that have been in situations that have been very, very difficult, where I've watched the company do things like, we will never lay people off, and then within 11 months have 2 layoffs. And that was tremendously violating to me as a person, because I looked at the leadership team and said, what are you doing? What are you doing that you have to go ruin half of the people's lives that you basically swore to protect? And it was very difficult. But what I had on my little team of 20 people was an amazing group of people where we kind of fed each other. And so Or that question is, it's a deeply personal question that only you can answer. And that is very dependent on your own personal situation of how much you're able to do. And if you're able to make a change, if you need to make a change, but it still can be a very satisfying experience just on your nuclear team. And so now I need to stop talking because, oh, I went a minute over. BS.
Oh, so it's okay.
Manage me, BS. What's wrong?
I don't manage you. I'll let you be you are, Sondra. No, it's awesome. I think, yeah, thank you. I mean, I think you have addressed most. To be honest, I made so many notes and I've got questions and all these things that are happening here. And then every time I like you answer the question as I write it. So that's cool. So I think you have addressed most of mine. But yeah, I wanted to say thank you to Benita, to Aura, to Brad, who provided some questions. I know you have addressed most of them. One of the last comments here was it was from Anonymous, but I think maybe because I didn't register on the YouTube. But love these moving conversations, Sondra and Biaz, insightful, real, and at the same time frustrating. I think it feels like that as well, right? Because we can, I mean, I think everybody buys into this and everyone really is passionate about this. We know this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard. It's hard, right? So
it is hard.
Maybe one thing that you can kind of help the audience to say, like, you know, just one little thing. I know you've kind of covered it, but
you know, the one little thing,
make it less hard.
Yeah. I mean, the one little thing for me over 25 years of an internal career that had probably more downs than ups organizationally, and where I was really having to kind of grit my teeth and make it through situations, was my own personal commitment to who I was and what I was getting out of the experience, and really focusing on that for myself. What is it that I am learning that I am going to take away from this that is going to help pull me through the moments where I really just want to say, peace out, jerks. You're not going to do this to me anymore. And then being very particular about the opportunities that I would then go take next, and to say, what am I looking for? So what I can say about every jump that I made in my career was that they were all very intentional, that I took things away and learned very specific things, going all the way back to 1996 when I went to Cadence. And I said, I am coming here to learn 3 things. And once I had learned those things, it took me 18 months, I quit. And I told them that when I took the job. Now, I was also 24, full of myself, thought I knew everything. Don't do that. And say what I said, which is, I'll probably only be here for 2 years. Don't do that. But have in mind, what are you getting out of this? And how is it serving you, and what's most important to you? That's it.
That's awesome, Sondra. I thank you again for your time.
Reach out anytime, please, anybody.
And we will, those that have registered and couldn't attend, it is on the YouTube. We'll share the slide deck and provide some opportunities for you to ask questions outside of this. So again, thank you, Sondra. Hope you have a great day. We are ending our day over here in South Africa. So
you're closer to your weekends than I am.
Yay,
enjoy them, please.
One more day. Thanks, Sondra.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.